started, I'm just going to take a few minutes to go over the technology and how to use GoToWebinar. So in particular, I'm going to show you some of the features that allow us to make our presentation more interactive. So you should see the control panel pictured on your screen right now. If you don't, it's because it's been minimized, and you can pull it back out by going to the Grab tab, as shown as on B on your slide, which hides and shows the control panel. There's also an attendee list where you can see all of the participants on the call. And if you have a question, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on the control panel, and I can unmute your line. Another way to participate is through the question pane, which is labeled as D on the slide. You can type your question in the question pane, and I can read it out to the group or respond privately. All of the panes can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the plus or minus buttons that are at the top left of each pane. And just a warning, in the past we've had some audio trouble, so if for some reason you're having difficulty being heard, you want to make sure that you're not muted on your personal phone and that you've entered the audio pin provided to you at the beginning of the call. If that doesn't work, you can hang up and call back in, and be sure to enter the audio pin. If you need to see your audio pins, you can send us a message, and I can click on your username and resend your audio pin. Great.
Okay, so this is Sarah Hollister with Achieving the Dream, and let me make sure we're recording here. Yep. Great. So welcome to the Achieving the Dream Leader College webinar, and I want to go ahead and turn it over to Carol Lincoln, our Senior VP. Carol?
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome to everybody who's on the webinar today. We appreciate you taking the time to stop out of your daily work and have a chance to chat about a subject that we really all care a lot about today. Before we get started, I want to just say who is on the line from the ATD staff. You've got Sarah Hollister, whose voice you just heard, who is the Associate Director of Programs. You've got Melanie Mulvey, who is the Assistant Director of Programs, and she's the one that's making sure that all the technology and so on and so forth continues to serve us well. And then, of course, myself. On today's webinar, we wanted to follow our usual pattern of giving just a few minutes towards the Achieving the Dream business, a few reminders we want to bring up. I want to do a couple of shout-outs to leader colleges that have been doing some exemplary things since we last talked via the webinar. And then we want to get into our presentation today, which is about transitioning adult education students into college. After that, we'll have time for discussion with our presenter, and then we will give a brief announcement about our next webinar and the topic. So let's get right into it and hit a few highlights of some business items that we wanted to call to your attention. A couple of weeks ago, I sent a note to all of the Leader College presidents advising them that they were welcome to join us for a special breakfast meeting at the AACC convention, which is coming up very soon in April in Washington, D.C. We would very much appreciate it if you would give your president a reminder of this invitation. The topic is going to be really of interest to him, I think. Last year when we had the presidents together, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching was present, as was the Dana Center out of Texas. And there was a presentation about the Statway Quantway work that was going on. And Bernadine Fong and Uri Treisman were able to share data that was showing that the Statway Quantway work was tripling the success rate of developmental math students, and in half of the time. That was a pretty remarkable accomplishment, and so this year we want to continue that conversation. We've invited Rob Johnstone, who's the founder and president of the National Center for Inquiry and Improvement, to be with us. He's recently completed a study that is talking about the financial payoff of investing in alternative math pathway programs such as Statway and Quantway. He's got some interesting information about the cost effectiveness of that approach that I think your presidents would be interested in hearing. So if they haven't already RSVP'd, would you please ask them to go ahead and get that done so that we can be sure and have them accounted for in just a few weeks. The next thing I wanted to bring to your attention was that it's coming up to a time when colleges are supposed to be putting together their annual reflections and annual reports to Achieving the Dream. Again, we sent an email out to all of the team leaders prior to the DREAM event in February, saying that what the deadline was and how to go about completing the materials this year. Wanted to give you a reminder that that deadline is May 8th and that there will be a webinar for colleges that have come on board that want to hear a little bit more about how to do that report. And you see some of the information there on the screen that tells you when that webinar is going to be happening. Some of you are also up for Leader College recertification this year. And so on the next screen, we've got a list of which ones of the Leader Colleges will need, if you care to keep your Leader College status, you will need to reapply this year because it will be your 3rd year anniversary since you were first certified for Leader College status. So if your name is on that screen, you will have some additional materials that you'll need to fill out and submit at the same time as you submit your annual reflection materials to Achieving the Dream. So it's due May 8th, and again, there's a webinar for those of you who are up for recertification. You can see the details on your screen. There's a couple of them coming up, and the idea would be for you to be able to call in any questions that you may have on either March 20th or April 10th. I see our screen has just gone black for a minute, so let me just repeat those dates for you. It's March 20 at 11:30 Eastern Time, and it's April 10 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So now let's go to a couple of shout-outs to institutions. This is the time of the year when the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence announces which institutions from across the 1,000 potential eligible colleges have made it to the top 150 list. They pick 150 colleges each year based on a variety of data criteria that they've done. And we're so pleased that 29 ATD colleges made that list of 150 who are eligible to compete this year for the $1 million prize money. These are the ones that made it to the list. Valencia, you'll notice, is on there, and there's a note about them not being eligible. Aspen has a rule that if you are the big winner in any particular year, you're not eligible to be the big prize winner in subsequent years, even though they do want to recognize that you met the basic criteria for getting into that elite group of 150 who are able to compete. So congratulations to all of those who are there. And then also congratulations to several colleges who have been on this list more than once. Brazosport and Broward have been finalists previously, and so has College of the Washitas, which is not listed on this list this year, but they were a finalist once before. Brazosport, Broward, El Paso, Lee, Macomb, Renton, San Jac, Tallahassee, and Valencia have all been on this list multiple times. The process that Aspen uses results in having 10 finalists announced in the fall of this year, and then the ultimate winner will be announced early next year. So we're looking forward to the time when we can say that, once again, the finalists in Aspen came from the Achieving the Dream Network. We hope that comes true. We wanted to also give a shout out to Broward and South Texas colleges. Recently, the Lumina Foundation announced a new effort that they're underwriting and that Public Agenda is coordinating. There's 18 different colleges and universities plus 2 statewide systems who've been selected to participate in this effort, where they're going to be piloting efforts for competency-based degree programs. And so in the next couple of years, we'll be hearing a lot from how these colleges, 2 from our own network, are identifying what are some of the challenges involved in moving towards a competency-based degree rather than a set of courses like we currently use in our higher ed system. We're pleased that we're going to be able to learn from those two colleges and probably quickly take the lessons from their experience and spread it through our network. So congratulations to both Broward and South Texas for being pioneers in this effort. And then we want to also give a shout out to all of you who are on the line, all of you who came to DREAM and who presented or did other things to make that institute a success. I know that we asked a lot of you to be leaders of birds of a feather discussion sessions. We've gotten feedback that those went well and that there was good turnout from most of those sessions. So we do thank you so much for stepping up and playing that lead role that we do expect of all the leader colleges. With that, I think we're ready to look at today's topic. And we have Bryce Humphreys with us from Yakima Valley Community College. He's the Dean for Basic Skills at the Grandview campus. And he's done a dissertation on effectiveness of transition strategies for adult students. He also led a Birds of a Feather session at DREAM on this topic of transitioning adult education. Bryce tells us there was a really good turnout and a good discussion. And as a result of that, we wanted to ask him to please give us a snapshot of some of the things that were discussed at that Birds of a Feather session and some of the work that he's been doing at his college. So Bryce, with that, I am ready to turn the audio over to you and invite you to share with us some of what you've been thinking about on this important topic.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here again. My name is Bryce Humphreys, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you for a few minutes. So I guess I'd start by asking the question, why is this topic important? Many of our adult ed students, we call them adult ed, ABE, basic skills students, don't come to us with a goal of transitioning to college. And so why do we want to put much effort into trying to get them into college? And there's a couple reasons why I think this is a very pertinent and important topic. In the state of Washington, this is especially relevant where adult ed is part of the mission of the community colleges, and the state is adopting a performance-based funding model where transitioning basic skills, adult ed students into college is something where there's quite a bit of priority and there are funds attached to that. So there's some pressure coming from those policies, and it also helps enrollment and recruitment. It makes no sense to bring some adult ed students into the institution, teach them some English, help them to earn a high school credential or a GED, and then say goodbye to them when we can save the cost and the expense and the effort of trying to recruit them and additional students, but help these that we already have transition into college and succeed. And finally, from a social justice perspective, we know that increasingly jobs that give a sustaining wage require some type of post-secondary education. And so from a social justice standpoint, I don't think we could be true to ourselves or say we're being true to our mission if we are not putting forth effort to help these students move into college and succeed. So I'd like to share a little bit of data from YVCC. This is something that over the past few years has become a focus for the institution as well as across the state, as I'd already mentioned. So when we look at the percentage of high-level adult ed students who transition to college at YVCC within a year, then you can see that from 2008 to 2011, we've seen an increase from 41 to nearly 45%, and for the institution as a whole. And then at the Grandview campus, which is where many of these efforts started, from 06 to 10, we saw an increase from 15 to 25%. And we're happy with those increases, but obviously we have a long ways to go. Too many of our students that come through our adult ed programming are not moving into college, and it's something that we are continuing to work on. So I'd like to share with you some strategies, some things that we have done that have been found effective, and the strategies that I'm going to share with you really come from three sources. One, they are best practices that we have implemented at the college and through our own internal research. So my dissertation research, we found them to be effective. Secondly, they are strategies that come from the literature. When you look at transition programs across the country, some of their best practices are included here. And then finally, there are some activities which have been shown to be best practices elsewhere that YVCC is experimenting with that we feel show great potential for helping our students transition. And not in any particular order of priority, but we'll just go through and hit some of the highlights and then open it up for some questions. So first, recruitment of students into a formal transition program, it needs to be something very intentional. These are students, as I mentioned previously, who may not see themselves as college material and don't see themselves as, they're not used to seeing themselves having success in a formal college environment or a formal educational environment. And so being able to recruit them and share with them, hey, this is a special program you're qualified for, you have the potential to succeed, is something that can be quite effective. I also need to give them a great deal of individualized attention. These are students who, again, are not used to having success in an educational environment oftentimes, and they don't know that they belong at the institution, and there's a lot of internal barriers that invariably inhibit their advancement. And so having some faculty and staff who can reach out to them, know their names, and give them the individual attention they need is absolutely crucial. And then it's very important that as an institution you're able to track student data for continuous improvement. And that's one thing that ATD has been great about as far as helping institutions develop that capacity and the ability to look at our own data to determine whether or not strategies or interventions are successful. Next, if we go to the next slide, please. There's a variety of support strategies we'll want to implement. Very focused transition advising is something that we found at YVC is critical. And advocacy, one of the things that I find interesting is we have one of the most complex programs serving the neediest students who are the least educated about higher education. Adult ed programs, based on the policies and the funding structure, are set up quite differently than higher ed. And when we're trying to mesh those together, there's a myriad of problems and barriers, internal barriers that come up. And so you really need someone within the system who can be an advocate for the students, can work through admission, placement, registration, financial aid, a variety of issues that students need to address as they successfully come into the college. And then financial aid, I don't think we can overemphasize that. For most of these students, they are from a lower socioeconomic strata, and if they do not have financial aid, they're not going to transition into college. And so we need to be able to have individualized plans for them. We're relying on federal, state aid, whatever aid they are eligible for. It's also very important that they become familiar with the college, that there's some type of an orientation. They learn how to navigate within the college, that they are familiar, that we can associate them with the services that are available to them, that they understand what college vocabulary is, what's a credit, what's a degree, what's a certificate, what's financial aid, a variety of things such as that. So this orientation is familiarizing them with the college so they're comfortable there is quite important. And then academic and personal support. You can see a list of different types of supports there. As we know, these students live very complicated lives, and there's a variety of issues that they face outside of their schooling that can be a very easy reason to disengage and to walk away from school. And so providing them with wraparound support services that help them manage their lives, manage their time, and be successful students. They're learning how to be students, and giving them the academic supports help with that as well. So Next slide. So on instructional strategies, there's a variety of things that we need to look at relative to instructional strategies. One is we need very clear curricular pathways leading from adult ed into college. And unfortunately, those all of us professionals that are within the system oftentimes don't know what the next step is for the students. And if we don't know, how in the world can they know what is the next step? You want to start with English and math. At YVCC, we've had quite a bit of success with English, so we have a very clear pathway that eliminates the need to take the placement test. So our faculty are a better gauge of how well the students are doing academically than a standardized test. And those pathways, having clear pathways, is critical. In Washington State, our IBEST program has been very, very successful in helping students transition into college. And some of the key components of that that's been important are having a hierarchical career pathway that we put students into, and that informs the instruction. So we have contextualized instruction, and students are progressing in student cohorts. So all of those components together are very powerful. We also have on there enrollment in 2 stacked classes. Stacked classes or co-enrolled classes where adult ed students can enroll in a college course. May not, in YVCC, they're not receiving college credit for it, but they're physically there. They're being treated just the same as all the other students by the instructor. They're seeing that they can succeed, that they're not that different from everyone else. And in the research that I've done, these co-enrolled or stacked classes and IBEST programs were, statistically speaking, the most effective instructional strategies that we've implemented to help students move into college. Next slide, please. I had already touched on contextualized instruction. In basic skills, adult ed, you're teaching reading, writing, math, but there's a variety of content that you can bring into there for a professional technical pathway or more of an academic transfer pathway, and that makes the content much more engaging and helps prepare them for college. Integration of computer technology is vital in our instruction. Too often, adult ed relies on paper pencil rather than integrating technology. And if students are going to be successful in passing the new GED or in going to college, they have to be computer literate. And so we need to start integrating that from the get-go. Also, the next bullet, establish and implement academic standards, kind of goes with the last one. We want to start to create our classes so they mirror the way college classes operate. There is history in adult ed of being more of a community service model, very laissez-faire, easy come, easy go. Students show up sometimes and not. There's no penalty for that. There are few academic standards. And that has changed over time, but we have found that our students have been more successful if we provide more structure to them and we have some standards that we hold them accountable to. And they will meet those standards as we set appropriate standards and structure for them. Then accelerated learning, trying to increase the time of engagement, reducing the length of the pathway through remedial type work so they can get into college sooner. We're all familiar with this concept. That's incredibly important as well. Then prior learning assessments, we are engaging in a competency-based or launching a competency-based high school diploma program and working with PLAs. I think that has tremendous potential if we can take an adult who comes to us that is either working or has worked in an area. We can recognize some of their experiences and their skills. It's very affirming for them and is a great recruitment strategy and helps encourage them that, hey, they're already on the path. We can acknowledge things they've already done, and they're that much closer to getting into college. Next slide, please. There are some very key people in helping students succeed. We need very experienced, trained faculty and staff who understand the student body that we serve, and invariably I found that we've had some incredible instructors and staff in adult ed. They're there because they have a passion for the students, not because for the glory and the glamour and the money. But there's leveraging those expertise is incredibly important. And within the institution, you really need to have some very strong partnerships across the spectrum of the entire college with the business office, with faculty and academic departments, to develop those pathways with your admissions, testing, registration, financial aid people. This really, to have an effective transition program or strategy, you really have to engage folks from the entire spectrum of the college and have those partnerships. They understand what it's about, what the goal is, and how they can help minimize those barriers. And then some dedicated faculty. As we've done qualitative research with our students, what has come up time and time and time again is how critical a role faculty play in helping our students succeed. Students tend to think less of themselves and their abilities, have less confidence in themselves than the faculty do. And so as the faculty, someone who they respect, who they admire, is giving them, pushing them, is very affirming with them, expresses confidence in their abilities, helps them set high goals. It's incredibly powerful and very effective in helping them succeed. And there's some research on adult ed students and how faculty who help them set goals really help those students transition to college much better. Next slide, please. And then fellow students are important. You know, I already mentioned this idea of cohort groups with iBest, but having that support group of other students who they can relate to, who they can support each other and help each other succeed is very powerful, as well as families. We know that family members can be a great help or a great hindrance to our students. And so as an institution, we want to look for ways to help foster and encourage the support of family members so they can help students manage children and life issues, and so they can focus on school. And then finally, external partnerships with employers and other entities. So whether we're talking about developing career pathways and internships and job opportunities in a professional technical area, or we're talking about partnering with CBOs or other community organizations that can help students deal with life issues such as transportation and food and clothing and child care and whatnot. Those partnerships are very important to helping students succeed and serving our students. So those are in a brief nutshell, some of the primary strategies that we have found effective. I think a lot of it boils down to this idea of providing the institutional wraparound support, the help in barrier removal within the institution, having clear curricular pathways, and expressing a lot of confidence in the students to help them know that they can succeed. So at this point, I think we're going into some questions. There's entertain questions that any of you may have, and I believe there's a couple of questions on the next slide that can help us launch into that.
Yeah, this is Sarah Hollister. Thank you so much, Bryce, for sharing the strategies that Yakima has been implementing. Right now, before we move to any discussion questions, I just want to see if the audience has any questions to ask. As a reminder, there are two ways that you can go ahead and ask questions. You can type in a question to the question bar on your control panel, or you can go ahead and raise your hand virtually by pressing the little raise hand button on your control panel, and that will go ahead and indicate to us that you have a question, and we can go ahead and unmute you. So please, if you have any questions, please type them in or raise your hand.
And Sarah, this is Carol. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, Carol.
For some reason, I told you ahead of time we were having a thunderstorm here. For some reason, I'm not able to see the webinar screen anymore. So if you'd be willing to sort of monitor and take control of the questions, that would help, because I can't see right now what questions might be coming in.
Sure, I definitely will. I saw that you weren't online, so I thought I'm pleased to hear you on the phone.
Yes, I'm here by phone, but we've lost internet connectivity here because of the storm.
Great, great. So do we have any questions that are coming in yet, Melanie? Nothing yet. Bryce, I just have a few questions based on what you were talking about. One was in terms of kind of the integration of computer technology and the contextualizing the instruction. And I think we talk a lot about integrating technology into our instruction, as well as teaching basic skills while integrating context. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, what that actually looks like in the classroom, and how you coach faculty, or how you're working with your team to actually make that happen.
Okay, so let me start with the technology. We have some faculty who have used Canvas. It's a course management system similar to Blackboard or Angel or YVCC. Canvas is the product that we use at our institution. And we have had some faculty using that, but many who have not. And as we have, with some of the changes that we are in the midst of making, we are, by next fall, all of our courses, all of our ABE courses will have a Canvas component. And so faculty are going through training and developing curriculum for their courses to do that. And there have been some faculty leaders that have taken the bull by the horns and run with that and are doing quite well with it. And we also have faculty who are struggling a bit, and I've given them a deadline by which they need to have the training done so they can start doing this, as well as a deadline of next fall to begin implementing. And we're providing, in fact, we have a showcase today where we're showcasing some of the things they can do in their classes and highlighting what faculty are doing. We have some work groups where faculty are working together on training and also sharing ideas on how they can integrate the technology into their courses. We are going to be purchasing some tablets, that classroom sets of tablets that they can use in their classrooms as well. And the idea with the Canvas is that when you've got a course management system, and you're doing some hybrid or enhanced courses, you can be posting assignments, they can be posting syllabi, they can require students to go in and access a video or a recorded lecture or an internet site online. They can have their gradebook recorded online. And so integrating some of those basic functions of the course into delivering it electronically is our first step there. And then as far as integrating content, I'd mentioned this competency-based high school diploma that we are working on, where we are integrating social studies and science content into some of our courses. So all of our reading courses will have science content. All of our writing course, we have reading and writing courses separate. All of our writing courses will have social studies content, and students will, and as faculty are developing this content, we're using Canvas as the repository for that. We have half a dozen different instructional sites, and that helps us move it. Faculty from different campuses and learning centers share instructional materials by having it available online, and then that also helps us move in the direction of making them more hybrid courses. But the students are going to be able to earn high school credit in the social studies or the science areas through their courses. In our IBEST programs, we have a cohort of students. It's, again, a contextualized instructional model where, say, for example, in our nursing assisting program, the textbook that's teaching them the content for the nursing assisting is also the textbook for their reading and writing classes. So the reading strategies are specific to that. The vocabulary that they need for the nursing assisting is the vocabulary that's taught in the reading and writing classes. The writing strategies are all geared towards the helping them master that nursing assisting content. And so we're taking a similar approach with the transfer material.
Yeah. Sorry, no, that's a great example. That's really helpful. We just had a question come in. Sorry, I didn't mean to to cut you
No, that's
off,
fine.
but so the question is a little bit about, you mentioned some data on the first slide that showed, that, you see more students advancing in terms to credit level courses. But what can you talk a little bit more about the data that is showing that this works? So, I think campus-wide showed, a slight uptick. But, what data are you tracking to measure the success of these initiatives, and how are you analyzing it, and where is it telling you to move forward and keep on your track with what you're doing?
So the data that we came up with those percentages
Right.
is from what we would capture in a given year all of the students, all of our adult basic ed students that we have them teach them at different levels, so levels 1 through 6. And so if they're at level 4, 5, or 6, which means they're academically high enough that they could transition into college within a given year, within a year. So we capture that as a cohort, how many students we served in a year that were at that level academically, and then we follow them throughout the next year. By the end of the following academic year, how many of them were enrolled in a credit-bearing course, a college-level course. And so that's how we came up with those percentages. And then when we, as far as determining what strategies are effective or not, from a quantitative perspective, we did some statistical analysis, some regression and correlation analyses to show when we looked at students that were engaged in, say, an iBest or that STAT classes, or we had a few different strategies that we'd identified. And then we looked at students who had participated in that, and then how many of those had enrolled in college versus those who had not, and then did some analyses that way. We also did some focus groups with students to find out what things they said were most effective. Focus groups with students who had transitioned to find out what had been most effective in helping them succeed.
And have you been looking, guys, at any retention and course completion beyond that initial getting into college level credit?
We are looking at that, and it's not reflected in those figures that I showed you. When I mentioned the performance-based funding from that the state is putting in place, that is a part of that. And I don't have at my fingertips some data. We're starting to look at that a bit more. The first step was let's try to get them transitioning, and then we've got to keep them going. And so we have some of that data. We look at quarter to quarter, year to year retention, as well as completion, run a quarter system, completion of 1545 credits, and then a degree. Unfortunately, I can't tell you off the top of my head what that is. But in a general sense, I can say it's something that we still need to improve upon. And we're finding some of these strategies, learning communities, cohort groups, are those things that help retain them most effectively as well.
Great. I think now I'd like to move on maybe to some of the discussion questions. Please, audience, please feel free to come up with any questions as we're talking. Go ahead and type them in, and we'll be sure to get them answered, or raise your hand. But I wanted to kind of turn over to the audience a little bit and see if anyone wanted to share how you've been integrating adult basic ed and credit level courses at your college, and talk a little bit about what the challenges have been and any tips you might have. Anyone want to share a little bit about what they're doing? And if you raise your hand, we can go ahead and unmute you so you can speak. or if anyone's just starting to think more seriously about this work and has any questions about getting it started.
Sarah, this is Carol. I've got a question. If none else,
Sure.
No one else is coming in right now.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Bryce, about the general attitude at your institution about adult basic ed students. I think a lot of our colleges are in state systems now that are struggling with this because they may not have places where adult ed students can go, if not to the community college. And yet, with the pressure to try to get more college-ready students into the flow of the college, there's sometimes the fear that these are going to be the students that get left behind and don't really have a seat at the table at the community college. I'm wondering is that kind of issue prevalent in your area? Are people concerned that maybe it's too hard, takes too many resources to really transition adult ed students into the college, and that maybe it would be better if that wasn't something that the college spends its time on? And if there is any kind of discussion like that, how have you dealt with that?
There certainly is that type of a discussion, and adult ed, regardless of where it is woefully underfunded. You know, we talk about community colleges being underfunded. Adult ed is even worse, and the effect of that is there aren't as many dollars attached to those students while they are in an adult ed program, and so there isn't as much financial incentive to serve them to run adult ed programs or to staff them adequately. And so that is a huge barrier, and it's one that we continually struggle with. And with that, there's a perception of those students over there versus our students, and that has been as much or more of a barrier than anything else, is changing the mindset that, hey, you know what, for many of our students, they're in adult basic ed rather than developmental ed because they walked in a different door when they first came to the institution. But the skill level, often you'll see a great deal of overlap in the content and of adult ed classes and developmental ed classes. And so trying to point out that we're really talking about the same student body. Oftentimes same types of skill set as our developmental students. So the same strategies that we're using to try to help reduce time to completion for our developmental students will help with ABE. And if the college is running an ABE program, we save money in recruitment because these students are already here. But there are tremendous issues with the mindset that people have. The adult ed programs feel like the red-headed stepchildren oftentimes. And so if the institution can give them that program a seat at the table and recognize the good work that the faculty does, that type of leadership or that type of recognition from upper leadership in the college is incredibly important. It gives validity to the conversations that have to happen with faculty in different departments, with the student services staff, and so forth. But the challenge, there is a big challenge with the money. Is there a financial incentive to do this work enough that the leadership of the institution will recognize it and put some resources and effort into it? In our case, we're fortunate that we have this funding model at the state level has really pushed the college to take another look at this effort. So there's more of a financial incentive than just a social justice argument to helping these students succeed. And that has done, frankly, more than anything else in helping us move this work forward.
And it also sounds like, once again, having data to show that these students do stick and do continue and do end up earning credentials is another important piece of the argument in order to continue to advocate for the programs that are going to help these students.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely critical. when we can show that they succeed. We celebrate their successes, advertise it, and really make a big deal about it for the students' sake, but also internally it shows our colleagues that they are successful and we can make a difference. Yes, that is huge.
Well, Sarah, it looks like we're ending coming to the end of our time here. Do you have any more questions that have come in?
No, I think we had, some offers for folks to share about their work, but I see we are fastly approaching our time. So maybe we'll go ahead and have to continue this conversation another time. So I think perhaps we're ready to move on to the closing up of this. And I just want to thank Bryce so much for putting this conversation together for us. I think it really is a social justice issue, and so we really appreciate you framing it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of wrap up a little bit and talk about our next webinar, and then we'll go ahead and do our evaluation as well.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So just real quickly, the next webinar for Leader Colleges is scheduled for Thursday, April 3rd at 12:30 Eastern Time. We've asked Dr. Stephen Murray and Dr. Deborah King from the Arkansas, they're actually from Phillips Community College in Arkansas. They're going to come and discuss how the colleges and the state organizations in that area have worked together to come up with a statewide system strategy for student success. We recently released a report on that that's going to soon be posted on our website, so we might get that distributed ahead of the webinar so folks can get familiar with that. But please tune in to that one. And then I think, Melanie, do you want to do a quick evaluation?
Great, thanks, Carol. So on your screen, you should see a poll pop up, and we ask that you select all that apply. So the options are: this call was useful and informative. I enjoyed the webinar format. This webinar gave me new ideas that we could implement. There was enough time for questions and discussion. And this call did not meet my expectations. If you could please select all that apply. I'm just going to give you another minute to respond. Great. We're about to close the poll, so please get your answers in. Okay. Last few seconds. Great. We're going to go ahead and close up the poll and go ahead and publish the responses. Great. So it looks like that this call was fairly useful to a good amount of the folks on the call. It does look like it didn't meet the expectations for some of the folks who dialed in, and so we really do hope that you'll perhaps provide us with a little bit more feedback about why it didn't meet your expectations and what we can do to improve the conversations in the future. And you can send any comments you have about the webinar to Melanie at nmulvey, NMULVEY, at achievingthedream.org. If you didn't get that, you can always send us comments at info@achievingthedream.org. It always gets to us. So we really appreciate the feedback. Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you to go ahead and close out.
Well, it's just a special thank you again to Bryce for being with us today. Thank you for sharing what you've learned how to do in this area. And thanks to all of you who were on the call today. We're glad we had some time with you, and we wish you all the very best for the rest of your day. And I hope that your presidents will respond to our RSVP for the breakfast meeting at the AACC convention. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Carol. Bye.